Welcome back to episode number 19 of Raise the Banner podcast. I'm one of your three co-hosts as usual today, Matt Couture here with Ben, Dearth, and JR Mott. JR, how are you doing?
Pretty chill. Just chilling. Watched a lot of football yesterday on my second day off in like forever, so
I guess that's good.
I mean, New Year's is nothing special for me. I just chill. I went to Guitar Center to look at a new guitar that I buy, but other than that, just watch the bowl games and work today, but
all right.
Ben, how about you, man?
Good. A little sore. I hit the slopes today with my dad and my younger sister. So got a chance to get out and do something physical today. But yeah, otherwise good. Did a little bit of football watching yesterday. New Year's it's usually a busy time for me. New Year's Eve is my anniversary. So over the weekend we went up to New Hampshire, skied one day, hung around, did some fun stuff. But yeah, overall good, ready to go.
Bro, in X Games mode.
Yeah. X Games for slow.
It's like SSX Tricky on the PlayStation.
Yeah.
What a throwback! Wow. Were you even alive when that game came out?
Yeah, dude, that was my game. I loved SSX Tricky.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the GOAT.
Was that PlayStation 2? I think so.
The first SSX came.
I'm trying to think. 16. Let's see. It would have been 2003 when I first started to play it. So yeah, I think that's PS2. Like right when the PS2 first came out, maybe.
Yeah, something like that. I don't know where JR went. He's frozen for me.
He's frozen in time.
But anyways, yeah, let's start us off. Oh boy, it's been an eventful week for Red Sox, I guess. Two big moves. We'll jump into them in a bit. But big picture, I kind of want to just go around the room on Red Sox ownership again. There's obviously been rumor report that they're interested in Mbappe. Big picture, I think we all know that they're unlikely to get him, even if they want him. With that said, even if they're interested in getting him, I think it's just something that's unbelievably ridiculous.
All right, I think I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. My internet crashed at my house.
All good.
We're just talking about Mbappe, the Mbappe rumor report.
Oh, Kylian Mbappe?
Mbappe, yeah. So hero of the 2022 World Cup. So for me, I mean, this is just a kind of another. What do I want to say? Is that phrase like notch in the belt, like for John Henry and for the Fenway Sports Group, and like adding business ventures to their portfolio? It's tough for me to think about like financial assets and how spread out they are for Fenway Sports Group as a whole, and not consider that. Well, I think it's hard not to say that it doesn't factor in, because I think it absolutely does. But I'd be curious to know how much it actually does impact the decision making on the specific budgets that the team decides to operate under. Matt sent me something, or I saw something from you, I forget what it was, a few days ago, that supposedly for 2023, Bloom was not allowed to spend more than $225 million on players.
Yep, Chris Castillo of Mass Live put that out.
So, it's hard to see things like, Fenway Sports Group is, I forget what percentage, but they're owners of the Pittsburgh Penguins. They have this alleged deal with the PGA that's I don't understand what it's for, because the articles I've seen don't really. Go ahead.
So Live Golf and PGA are merging. I don't know if you guys are big into golf, but I am a golf fanatic. I'm an avid golfer. I suck, but I love it. When Live happened, the Saudi Emirates group that founded it, along with I forget not Gary Player, I forget who it was. When they founded it,
Greg Norman.
Greg Norman. When they founded it, it was basically like, hey, PGA's not treating the golfers right. Let's get the big names, pay them outrageous amounts of money, and tour the world with golf and play a more fun style of competitive golfing. Well, because of everything that happened with the majors and stuff like that, PGA finally decided to come to their senses and say, this is what's best for the sport, and this is what's going to help grow the sport more. So they're merging. They don't really want to. But they're doing it because they know it's going to help grow the sport and help grow the game and bring it around.
So that I knew, but here's the interesting part, right? What was it, a month ago? John Rahm gets this insane deal from Live Golf, and he was immediately suspended for a year from the PGA, which I thought, my understanding was PGA, they suspended players for a year because that was essentially, they looked ahead and thought that eventually they might join forces with, the two might join forces, and I'm not articulating it right, but there was something to that effect where that's why it was a 1-year suspension, because they had this time frame in their head. And so maybe it wasn't that big of a deal, because if they're suspending John Rahm again for a year because he jumped ship, he left PGA for Live, then obviously it had nothing to do with any kind of a time frame regarding a merger. But what is the supposed, and if I missed it, I'm sorry, there's this $3 billion was the figure I saw, to do what exactly? To be part of the governing board that oversees both organizations?
I can read it to you right now.
So how much is Fenway Sports Group supposedly in for?
$2 billion.
$2 billion.
All right, here we go.
Oh,
right. Fenway chairman confirms talks with PGA Tour as doubts grow about Live Golf deal. Tom Werner on Monday acknowledged that the company has held talks with the PGA Tour as the golf organization framework agreement with Saudi-backed Live Golf faces new doubts. It's so Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods have their own thing that's going on in the PGA. It's their own little tournament type thing, how Live has their whole league inside the PGA. Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods have a collaboration of that that goes on during the PGA Tour year. And if I'm correct, they're buying in to be governing bodies of Rory McIlroy and Tiger Woods' indoor golf league, TGL.
So to kind of bring it back to what I was saying, right? They have this potential $2 billion deal with PGA Live Golf merger. I don't know what they're going to call it, but probably just be PGA again. But they're buying into this. I mean, what was the Penguins? 900? Was it 900 million?
It was just under $1 billion.
Was the Penguins sale?
900 million.
There's the rumor that, because you're talking, what's the Mbappe rumored transfer fee? 800 million.
Okay, so it's the Saudi league, the Al Hilal, or sorry if I butchered that, how it's really pronounced. They offered PSG, I think it was around just over or just under $600 million for the transfer for Mbappe, and just to pay him for 1 year, he was going to make upwards of $450-500 million. PSG declined it. They came back and they offered over $750 million. PSG declined it. Mbappe, if Mbappe wanted to go Al Hilal, he could have, but he couldn't have without the approval of PSG.
Right, because they own his rights, so they have to approve the transfer. So we're talking, if they're saying no to $750 million, let's just, it'll approach $1 billion if they really want to get him away from PSG and bring him to Liverpool. Then you have, and I know we've kind of beaten this horse to death, right? But then there's the rumored involvement to want to be part ownership with LeBron when the NBA expands and builds a stadium and puts a team in Vegas, right? So you have all these business ventures, which like great for John Henry and his family and their future, current and future assets, like setting their family up for life. But it's really tough as a fan when you see things from Chris Cotillo, however you say it, that he's hamstringing the front office with money. And I mean, couple that with, on average per person, Fenway is the most expensive stadium to see a baseball game at. It's frustrating when you see things like that. And of course, unless I missed it, I haven't seen any rumored offers for what the Red Sox had put out for Yamamoto. I know last week kind of went downhill fast for me. I'm sure you guys covered a lot, but like I didn't see anything out there other than it was somewhere south of $300 million was there. The rumored offer was it was like just under $300 million.
To buy a stake for Vegas?
No. Their offer to Yamamoto was rumored.
So I think it was James.
Was somewhere just under.
I think it was James Stewart that said that the base offer was below 3 with incentives to get to 3, or something like that. That's what he had heard. But there's still never been anything like very confirmed.
Official.
Yeah.
Right. The only thing. The only thing we're hearing out of Fenway is any trades that actually get executed or contract offers made to players, which to date, if I'm not mistaken, the only player they've actually signed is that reliever for $1 million. Am I correct on that? Everything else they've done. Oh, I'm sorry, they just got Giolito. That's Giolito, which was end of last week. It's just frustrating to see that they're not willing to spend in the neighborhood of the luxury tax on talent. Now, obviously, just like it was Bloom's job, it's Breslow's job to get the most out of his money. Because if they're gonna, if there was a $225 million cap last year, obviously the competitive balance tax is higher this year, but who knows? So let's just pretend it's a $230 million cap on the budget. It's still his job to fill, like to create a competitive team with that roster. But like big picture, and I'll kind of walk it back a little bit to opinions I've had over the last few years is, with all these information coming out about there being actual financial limitations, not that GMs don't operate under those already, but
they're often, for big market teams, they're often soft.
Correct.
This soft caps.
And so, I know like I was one of the bigger, Bloom haters out there. And, I think my position on him has softened a little bit because granted, he didn't spend his money wise enough to win. But, I think my opinion of him is a little bit different, knowing that, it wasn't essentially an open checkbook that he was working with. And
yeah, so, that was part of the issue, is a lot of people had this notion that like he was just scared and unwilling to spend the money, and John Henry was like, yeah, you could do so, and Bloom was just like, no. I know it's not my money, it's your money, but I'm just not going to spend it. And that's what drove me crazy for over the last year at least.
Yeah, and so, and just to kind of like wrap up my piece on this, if they're still going to do things the same way, then firing Bloom doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, I understand. No. I understand why they did it. They needed a scapegoat for why they, fell on their face 3 out of 4 years under his tenure. But if you're just going to operate this with the status quo, firing him makes no sense.
Yes, because if the notion is they want to win spending less, then I would say the main way you're going to do that is building in a farm system and having a consistent pipeline of cheap young talent. And if they feel like Bloom was successful in that sense, which, you know, we don't know yet because of these young guys obviously need to still come up. But on the surface, just rankings-wise, he was. Like, that's theoretically, why would you fire the guy that did the job that he was supposed to do? That was kind of his main job. But, like, if you're not going to spend a lot, I would have kept the guy that is building a structure to not spend a lot.
Right. And then, you know, and I think, you know, the broad, like, GM picture, I think that speaks to why, you know, and frame this however you want, but that's really, in my opinion, why you essentially hired your 7th option for your president of baseball operations. And not to say that he was like the 7th option, but he was like,
there was more other people just said no to interviewing. Like, I just want to. They say that comment a lot. We don't know if he was like actually the 7th option. They could have loved him and they just planned on interviewing a shit ton of people, and people said no. You know, so we don't know that. But I get what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, there are conversations that happen behind the scenes. You know, other GMs, other president of baseball ops, whatever you want to call that title, have to know what kind of framework other GMs operate with under ownership. Like, obviously people know, excuse me, other people know that if you go to Oakland, if you go to Miami, if you go to, you know, I would say San Diego a few years ago, that you knew that the owner didn't have the money for you to have large payrolls. And so I think that would speak to why certain people even declined to interview, knowing full well that they were not going to operate under the financial parameters that they felt were necessary to win.
Yeah. Plain and simple. Apologize.
No.
He'll accept your apology.
No, he looks like he doesn't. He looks like he's never seen a baseball field before.
Apologize. No, I mean, big picture, like, you know, he still made some
Yale
mistakes
even have a way. Does Yale even have a baseball team?
Who?
No, they have a mathletes team though. Hold up.
Yale does have a baseball team, so we can confirm.
Yeah, he played baseball there, I think.
I really
more like he was on the bench giving out water.
Or he was practicing and he was crunching all the nerd numbers.
He was being a athlete on the bench.
Here's what I'll, you know, to kind of round up the Red Sox. I mean, the ownership part of it is this. People can split hairs and try to say, okay, Liverpool's not connected to the Red Sox. They could be like, you know, other ventures don't really matter to the Red Sox. They're all separate. It's all great. That's great. Go ahead. Say that. I'm not like I don't even want to bother arguing with people at this point. But the reality is that they are not fully committed financially, or have not been for the last 5 years, to winning for the Boston Red Sox. Now, I understood 2020, even 2021. They went over. People want to say, oh, they went over the tax in 2022. Sure. They were like $5 million over the tax. They still didn't like open up the checkbooks. 2023, they theoretically should have. Everything could have been pushed aside if they spent big this offseason. People would have forgiven everything. The fact of the matter is they're looking like they're not going to. And so when you turn and say, okay, they're going to have another budget again that's going to be staying under the tax, while the Mets, the Yankees, the Phillies, the Dodgers, the Padres, well, the Padres are idiots, but all these big market teams are spending shit tons of money, and you're staying under the tax for 4 out of the last 5 years. And while you do that and tell the chief baseball officer of the Red Sox that they have to stay under a budget, the same ownership group is dishing out $2 billion for a golf venture.
Right. So while you brought up those teams, So I'm just trying to see. The Phillies had the fourth. I'm just going over playoff teams with pay and what their payroll number was. So this is off of USA Today. I think the number is correct. It doesn't look right, but I don't think it incorporates actual spending. I think it's active player payroll versus dollars actual spent against the luxury tax. And so you have the Phillies at 4, the Dodgers at 5. Toronto got in the playoffs, correct? Toronto was a wild card team. They're 7, Atlanta 8, Texas 9, Houston 10. So you have Minnesota got in, Arizona got in. So Baltimore, see 1, Miami 2, Arizona 3, Minnesota 4. So 4 teams of the 12 had lower payrolls than the Sox. So what's that? 2/3? Yeah. No. Yeah, 2/3. So 2/3 of the playoff teams had top 10 payrolls in baseball. So 8 of, if I think that's correct. So my point with that is that the teams that are spending are the teams that are actually, for the most part, right, are the teams that are actually making playoff pushes. Now, granted, like Baltimore happen to get flashes in the pan. They've got young talent. And you see that every once in a while where the teams with traditionally low payrolls make runs because they have cheap, controllable talent that's good now. I mean, for all we know, Baltimore could fall off the face of the earth next year and be, 20 games under 500. You have to, baseball for the most part is you have to spend in order to win.
You're Matt, you're muted.
It's not that necessarily. It's not that, and that's another thing that people have talked about. I see it online. It's like, oh, they have enough money where they should be able to win. That's not the discussion. I'm aware that the Orioles, the Rays, they can be successful right now. Granted, they have built the Orioles spent 5 years in misery. They were bottom. They sucked for 5 straight years. The Rays have been on this train of structure for what, 10, 15 years now, of how they go about and building and through the farm and stuff like that. It's not about whether they have enough money to win or not, because they do. It's not like they're a bottom 5 payroll.
No.
That the actual discussion and the distaste for ownership comes from the standard of what you should be as the owner of the Boston Red Sox. That's what it comes down to. It's not about that they're you can't win off of $230 million. It's that you're the Boston Red Sox. You've been under the cap for 4 of the 5 previous years. You got under the tax. You don't have the penalty set. You need to get ready to spend. This is the time to do it. The team's young. The team has some pretty good pieces. They had 3 or 4 glaring holes that they needed to fill, and they're cheaping out doing so. And you could theoretically be aggressive because you know that you have this young emerging talent that's about to break through the majors within the next year and a half. Very soon. On top of, look past the top 3 guys, they're going to have at least another 2 or 3 guys in the next calendar year that comes into the majors.
Yeah, and I know I've heard this on the radio. I think it was specifically last year, when was the Giants were the top team in the National League. I'm talking about 2022, not this past season. Got to remember we're now into 2024 now, so last year was not 2022. So at the deadline, the Giants were kind of overachieving, and they kind of went for it. They made some trades in order to take advantage of what was happening with their team. And the Red Sox didn't do that. So, I think that, they need to, and this is obviously more Breslow than it is ownership, although you have to factor in, who you're trading for and what kind of money comes along with that. But players, the young players that come up, teams really need to take advantage of cheap, controllable, like good talent. Say, even if the team overachieves, there's nothing wrong with adding a couple of pieces and taking advantage and maybe like stealing a World Series. I just wish, I wish they would do a little bit more of that instead of being like, well, no, yeah, we're overachieving, but we don't want to make certain moves because, it affects our 5 and 6 year plans. I think you can find a happy medium where you're not mortgaging your future, but, maybe you're moving a couple of guys that you think that maybe someday will be part of a core in 5 years because you can possibly take advantage of the right now.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably Bloom's biggest downfall. Like, it was his trade deadline, lack of trade deadline acquisitions. But it's just, again, but like big picture, it's not about like whether they can win at 230 or whether all these other expenditures from FSG is related or not related. The only thing that matters is they're not committing financially the way they did in years past. And they're like, that's what it comes like that's all that matters. So like
right.
People can make excuses for the distaste for them, but until they pay up, like there's gonna continuously be distaste and people are gonna be voicing their opinions. So when they turn and someone say, "Oh, they're dropping $2 billion on the PGA," well, how about literally like 1% of that $2 billion. What's 25 million out of 2 billion? I don't know, like 2%. Like 2%.
A lot of money still.
Yeah, but I'm just like if they can invest $2 billion, take 25 million of that and put it into the Red Sox payroll, and now that's a huge difference. It's a massive difference.
That gets you 3 more players.
2% of $2 billion is $40 million.
That will
less than 2% then. Less than 2%. Okay, that's literally less than 2% of what the projected golf deal is for the FSG. Is the difference between getting Jordan Montgomery or not.
He literally can make that $40 million by selling like a quarter of the shares of the Penguins.
Like, but like,
right?
Just that simple.
Are they doing
$30 million would get you Jordan Montgomery?
Is the PGA offer a joint? Are they joining up with anybody to make this pitch to the PGA, or is it just FSG on their own?
Well, there's no pitch to the PGA because the TGL is already official. It's just postponed a year.
No, I'm sorry. I semantically I'm wrong. But the offer that FSG that Fenway Sports is making, is it just them, or is somebody else also offering financial backing?
Oh, it's just them.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't heard anyone else, but anyways, let's just jump ship before JR has to pop off. Let's go into the actual 2 deals that were made. The Lucas Giolito signing, it was 2 years, 38 and a half.
38 million with an opt out after year
30.
1.
So he can opt
38. I thought it was 39. Well, whatever.
Anyways, he can opt out after year 1. If he doesn't, like he'll be back for year 2, and then there is, extended details that could potentially make a year 3 deal possible. Big picture, he's here for a little less than $20 million. He was really good in 19, 20, 21. He struggled in 22. He was pretty good for Chicago before the trade deadline this year. Then he went over to Anaheim and not Anaheim anymore, but the Angels, and then to the Guardians, I believe. Yeah, and just fell off the horse. Whether it's not related or not, he conveniently got divorced right around the trade deadline.
It was a really nasty one, apparently, too.
Yeah, so also maybe that played a factor. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
so on that, real quick, just because it factors in. So with the White Sox in 21 starts, he had a 3.79 ERA. In 6 starts with LA, he had a 6.89 ERA, and then in 6 subsequent starts in Cleveland, he had a 7.04 ERA.
Yeah, so he was a sub 3.8 pitcher over 20. How many starts in Chicago? 21.
21.
Yeah. So about 2/3 of the season, he was a sub 3.8 ERA guy. If you get that from him, that's probably a win.
Yeah. Now, I mean,
probably a win.
He was a little lucky. His FIP was a 4.43. But if you look at, his ERA plus was pretty good at 1.18. He was striking out almost 10 batters per 9. Walks per 9, a little elevated at 3. But overall, now granted, he didn't. I mean, you were still getting the strikeout numbers. The walk numbers were also the same. The difference being he got slapped around. So in 121 innings with Chicago, he gave up 58 hits. In 63 1/3 innings between the other two teams, he gave up 65 hits.
Yeah, so he gave up his big thing in the distaste of this was going on today on Felger Maz that I literally had to shut off. But anyways, was the long ball. He gave up 41 home runs last year, which is a lot, certainly a lot.
It led baseball.
Yeah, I did hear. I want to say if he pitched all his games in Fenway, that number dropped significantly. I want to say it would drop by 12 home runs. Not that that's going to make a big difference. He certainly needs to improve on that. But big picture, what are your thoughts on it? Do you like the deal?
On the Giolito deal?
Yeah.
I'll like the deal if he's good, and if he sucks again, or if he is the Angels or Guardians version of Lucas Giolito, I'll hate the deal and I'll be mad at it. But I mean, he hasn't thrown a pitch at Fenway Park yet as a member of the Red Sox, so you can't really say I don't like the deal or I hate or the deal. Well, if he's
what
good,
our job here is, JR.
If he's good, I'll love it. Like I said, but if he sucks, I'm gonna be like, man, we could have given that money, or we could have used that money elsewhere on another pitcher. Like, say, if we don't get Jordan Montgomery, as I've been pounding the fucking table for months now. Just you got Giolito, now you really have to go get a number one. Even though Montgomery's not truly a number one, he is your number one on this team. Or Blake Snell said he'd take a shorter deal with a higher AAV. Give him a 4-year deal and give him in the high 30s for the AAV. Just go get something.
I think realistically, Snell is, I don't know, just unlikely. Ben, what are your thoughts here?
Snell, yes, it's unlikely because he has such a West Coast bias. I would expect him to go to either the Angels or the Giants. Given the Padres situation, I think we've covered it. They had to take out a loan to make payroll at the end of last year. They're out, in my opinion. Could the Red Sox be a dark horse team? Sure. He has plenty of familiarity pitching in the American League East. He's got some big game experience. If the Rays don't botch hit the Game 6 gem that he threw in the 2020 World Series, who really knows? Because they were trending to force a Game 7. So it's kind of there. I don't know if there's any peripheral numbers that would indicate any potential slide. On the Jordan Montgomery thing, I think that's quintessential, like what Matt has said on this show before, that you don't have a true ace, but you have two, when they're pitching the way they can, you have two really good number twos. There's not a real big drop off, in my opinion. If Montgomery pitches to his, I don't want to say ceiling, but if he pitches like he can and Giolito pitches like he can, you have two guys that are very good number twos.
If you get a version of Jordan Montgomery from this year's playoffs, that is an amazing signing.
Yes, and so they have.
You just get the Montgomery for the last few years.
Yeah, and hopefully he can keep it up. He's on a 3-year run of really good durability. The innings are there. So I just that's while I don't think they likely do it, I think that they look at it and go, no, he's out of the budget that we want to spend. I like the Giolito signing. I think he can succeed in Fenway. If you can get the Giolito from the Chicago White Sox, good move. In terms of the time that he pitched in Chicago last year, compared to the rest of his career, other than I want to say wins, and that's overrated, but the number, he was on par with everything he had done up to that point. His home run rate was normal, strikeouts per 9, strikeouts to walk ratio, like all that stuff, right? So if you can get that version of him, good signing. And you're allowing him to bet on himself, because if he goes out there and he's top 8 Cy Young vote, is just an absolute anchor every 5 days. He can bet on himself, and maybe that's what he looks at it and says, hey, like, I can bet on myself, opt out, and go get like a legitimate long-term deal somewhere, whether it's here or somewhere else. I just, I don't hold out hope that they're going to make that move to add in, somebody like that, like Montgomery, but that's what they need to do. They need to go get somebody. If it's not Montgomery, they need to go, if Burns
Jesus Luzardo.
I don't love Luzardo as a guy that you're gonna like. I wouldn't want Luzardo as a guy like, okay, like you're the ace. He doesn't have a consistent track record of durability. Like, yeah, last year was great, but that was the first time he had done any of that over a full season, because he doesn't typically last a full year. That's why somebody like a Montgomery makes a little bit more sense to me. If you can figure out a way to not shell out
high prospects,
too many premium names for a guy like Corbin Burns. Like, if you can go get Corbin Burns for a year, fine. It's just, I'm guessing they're going to want a premium prospect for him in return, which for 1 year of Burns, I'm not willing to do.
And you really have that risk that he's not going to sign an extension.
Well, he's a Boris client. Like, there's no way he's going to test free agency, especially if he's in a contract year. That he's going to throw the shit out of the ball, and he's going to want to go out and get, an Aaron Nola type contract.
I could see that.
And I know Matt and I talked about this, and it would be like, and when I say the Aaron Nola deal, I mean like what Aaron Nola could have gotten on the open market if he really wanted,
compared to what he took from Philly.
Right. Like he was like, hey, like, I don't want to go anywhere. Like, he wanted the extra year. He's like, I'll take a little bit less AAV. He's like, I just don't want to. He's like, I want to stay here. He's like, let's make something happen. If he had really pushed them, or gone to the open market and gotten a max contract, he could have gotten a $30 million a year deal over 6 years. But that's not what he wanted. He wanted to stay in Philly. So Corbin Burns could absolutely be that guy next year, which is why for him it makes sense that he's not going to sign an extension. But that's what I think you got to do. If you can figure out a way to get him out of Milwaukee without giving up a premium name, I would say, unless I have an assurance of a contract extension, I'm not trading any one of the top 3 guys in the system. Other than that,
what about Dylan Cease?
So the thing with Cease is, I look at Cease as somebody who's like, I don't want to say slightly, but like, I look at him as like a Jordan Montgomery. He's a really good number 2. I don't see him as like a true ace. Now, granted, could he become something? Sure, because you have control over him for 3 more years. I think he's in an arbitration.
3 or 4 more years.
So, but that's a guy you'd have to give up a Marcelo Mayer or a Roman Anthony for.
I think they could probably get away with not having to give that out.
But for 3 years of control on a guy who's a fringe ace. Now, granted, I'm also thinking from the White Sox perspective. If I'm the White Sox, I want Mayer or Anthony in a deal for Cease, because if I'm going to give up a guy who's cheap and good and controllable for the next 3 years, I want something of premium value in return.
Yeah, I mean, I think their most likely scenario is a trade for a quality pitcher at this point. There was a mock out there of a deal that involved Teal for Luzardo the other day or yesterday, and I basically said, if I'm Breslow, I'm not trading one of those three unless it's the star. George Kirby kind of fits that range, but there's not that many that do.
George Kirby or Shane Bieber?
No, not Shane Bieber. Definitely not Shane Bieber. Shane Bieber's got 1 year left. Even if he extends, you're paying him a good amount. He's had some elbow worries, and he's really not been prime Shane Bieber anymore either. I'd like him. I'd take him, but
I'll buy him all the spider tack in the world that he wants.
I'm not touching the top three for a guy like him. I think there's such a big gap between the Sox top three and the 4, 5, 6. Not in the sense that 4, 5, 6 aren't that good. It's in the sense that the top three guys really have that level of potential. And so if I'm Breslow, I think I would rather them trade for like a solidified number 2 or 3 guy that's reliable, and we could go into who fits that role. Maybe like 2 years of control, and give up a little bit less than going for like a Dylan Cease, who's like maybe an ace, not like a true ace. Like, you know what I mean? That fringe 1-2 guy, and then give up a guy like Kyle Teal or Marcelo Mayer or Roman Anthony. So, you know what I mean? I like, if they're not going to go free agency route, like just an example, like I rather them take a shot on like someone like Tristan McKenzie out of Cleveland than like pay a huge price for like Dylan Cease, where you give up Kyle Teal and Cedine Rafaela and Wickham Gonzalez and another guy. Like, we have to pay this absolute haul for a guy who's like, again, I like Cease, but like, I don't know. Do you consider Cease like a solidified ace in the MLB? I think he's like a fringe 1-2. Like he can be. He didn't pitch like an ace this year.
I would say he's a solid 2 fringe ace. That's how I view him.
Yeah, so like, I rather them find like a mid to lower end 2 and give up probably significantly less than the price for a low end 1. And I think that the price will be that much different. And so I know that's like not what we really want to maximizing the chances of the major league roster. But like, I rather them. If I don't think really under 90% of circumstances they should be giving up these top 3 guys, because they're all should be here within the next year and a half, and they all have a chance to be like,
I think
more than anchors of this team.
I'd say 2 years is probably more likely, but
for all 3, yeah. I mean, I think Kyle Teal could realistically be up by the end of this year. Roman Anthony's very young, but I mean, he's gonna start in Double-A. Like, I mean, if he hits the shit out of the ball in Double-A, like, they could fast track him. Like, I wouldn't be shocked if any of them were here this year. But my guess would be Kyle Teal would be.
I'd be stunned if Marcelo Mayer sees an inning at Fenway, barring a major injury to somebody.
So he is probably last on the list, just because I think he came up to Double-A. He was banged up. He played through it. He didn't hit that well, and then they just basically said, like, let's shut it down for the year because you're clearly not 100%.
And he's also blocked.
Yes, and yeah, they have less of a need to rush him too. Yeah, I mean, definitely that will definitely play a factor in it. I mean, I would, like I said, I would guess Kyle Teal would be the maybe end of next year. I think Roman Anthony could be anywhere from like mid to end of next year to like early to mid 2025. It really depends on where the team's at and how much they want to fast track him. And then Marcel Mayer, I would say most likely mid 2025 or mid to early 2025. And if then like, they'll figure out the middle infield at that point. Grissom's not going to be blocking. He's not going to be blocking Marcelo Mayer in the middle infield. Now, if Grissom plays well, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I think there's a realistic chance. Let's say Grissom plays well and Mayer's well, that they get him to play third for a year or two.
Rafi play DH.
Yeah, and DH Rafi for the time. Like if they need a match, or the other option would be, again, it's so tough to predict where this roster will be even in a year because they have a shit ton of different options. But like I could see Yoshida the full-time DH in 25, Grissom in left field, and like Story back at second and Mayer at short type of thing. There's multiple options.
Well, realistically, I would say if Grissom and Mayer both take steps forward, just given the current makeup of the roster, you may even have to consider trading one of those two guys. Because if you're going to make,
they could trade Grissom in a year.
Right. Well, if you're gonna say like, okay, Grissom like learn third base because Rafi's gonna move to DH. Well, now you have a DH problem because now Yoshida would have to play outfield, and that's a defensive issue. So I think that and if they both take a step forward, I'm going back to Grissom and Mayer here. Whoever you like more, trade the other guy for pitching.
Yeah, again, like that's something that they can deal with. If the worst case scenario is you have Grissom hitting well and he's a major league player at 24 years old and Marcel Mayer is ready to break through into the majors, like that's not a bad problem to have, obviously. Speaking of Grissom, obviously he is here because of the I almost said Patriots, the Red Sox trade of Chris Sale. They shipped off 17 out of his $27.5 million owed to him this year. They will still owe him a bunch of deferred money, but that's beside the point.
That doesn't follow him to Atlanta?
No. The Braves are only paying him $10 million for this year, and then he's a free agent.
Okay.
JR, what are your thoughts on this deal in general?
Well, I thought it was a troll when I first saw like that Braves account tweet hearing Sale to Atlanta. I was like, yeah, it's funny because I was just talking to like a couple people in the group chat, and we were just talking about Chris Sale, and I said, I wonder if he does waive his no trade for a certain team. Like I really do. Like if they're really trying to shed payroll to like try to sign a bigger name or like to give out a couple deals, I wonder if he ends up getting shipped out. Because I said they do want to trade for a second baseman. They didn't want to sign one. They wanted to trade for one. And then 20 minutes later, I get a message from you. Whoa. Wow. Holy shit.
Well, first of all, Carabas just posted a video of Sale closing out the World Series. It instantly sent myself and everyone on Twitter into a frenzy of why? Like, why did you just out of the blue post a video of Chris Sale throwing the final pitch to Machado? So then it got into, is Chris Sale getting moved into the closing position after they moved Kenley? So then everyone was like, all right, Chris Sale may be the closer. Chris Sale may be the closer. And then that post from the Atlanta guy came out that just like, Birdie told me that Chris Sale's coming to Atlanta. Everyone was like, do I believe this? Do I believe this?
And then passing.
Yeah, and I have his notifications. I'm sitting on the couch watching TV with, Nicole, and I literally am just like, holy shit. I was like, no fucking way.
I get a text message from Matt. Wow, holy shit, check Twitter.
Yeah, and Nicole's like, what? And I was like, they just traded Chris Sale. And she was like, good, he's never healthy. I'm like, all right.
Well, that's what I've been like really hard on the guy about like not being healthy, and I've been saying they should upgrade off Chris Sale or just move him back. And I've been saying signing a guy like Montgomery and maybe a Shota Imanaga will help, take down the workload on him so he'll stay healthier. But man,
yeah, I mean, just to let it know, like, I think I speak for probably you guys and like most people. I want Chris Sale to go to Atlanta and finally stay healthy.
I want to see him shove
I want him to
all year.
I want him to have success because, like, through all of this, the distaste for Sale has never been about him personally. I've always loved Chris Sale. I've always desperately wanted him to be successful because he's like the type of guy that you love to root for. It's just been incredibly unfortunate that, what was, if you said 5 years ago, after he signed that extension, that it would be more than likely that Chris Sale enters the Hall of Fame in a Red Sox uniform or Red Sox hat, I would probably say that's a pretty good shot.
I still think
he would have been here he still might. I mean, I don't know how long he was with Chicago, like 6 or 7 years, 7, 8 years. So he would have been here, I think 7 years. But if he played through 8, I want to say that might have been what it is. Like, he would have a World Series, and things would have played really well. But unfortunately, like, injuries just derailed what was a phenomenal career, and he hasn't been able to stay healthy. But, that's just one thing.
Yeah, the line drive injury was a freak accident. Like, who would have expected that to happen? The UCL.
Well, the photo of him like holding up his finger and he's like almost laughing. Someone posted that the other day, and I was like, he was just so like utterly disgusted. When you're just going through, everything is going bad, and then something else goes bad, and you're just so disgusted with everything that you just can't help but laugh about it because it's so unbelievably ridiculous. That was Chris Sale going, all right, I just came back from a broken rib, I think it was. Here's my finger that just got snapped from a baseball.
Yeah, but like the UCL, that happens with pitchers, especially with a dude his size. He's very slender. He's very skinny. So there's not a lot of muscle in that area. So that tendon was going to give out.
Yeah, I mean, that entire deal extension was just awful. I remember texting Ben at the time they were discussing a deal. I was like, do not sign him to extension. Do not extend him. Do not extend him.
Yeah.
And he extends him, and I text Ben, I'm like, what the fuck? It's going to be a disaster.
Yeah, I was fine with an extension. I just didn't want him to go more than like 3 years. Because I knew that if you look at his career pre-Boston Red Sox, there's a lot of mileage on that arm. Because you forget, Chris Sale was not a starter for the first 2 years of his career. He was a bullpen arm. And so you look at, and there's a lot of mileage. He was north of 200 innings, I think, every year as a member of the White Sox. There's a lot of mileage on that arm. It was just only a matter of time. I was fine with them extending him. I just didn't want him to go more than like 3 years.
I mean, if they went 3 years, like $90 million at the time, like we would have been like, okay, like whatever, and I would have been much more okay with it. Like, right. All right, yeah, do it. 3 years is reasonable. But like, what's turned into, I think I pulled it up. I posted about it. Chris Sale signed a 5-year, $145 million deal prior to the 2019 season. He left Boston pitching 298.1 innings since the start of the 2019 season. He will be paid $128 million for that 298 innings. You take that 298, divide that by 128. No, 128 by 298. He got paid approximately $429,000 per inning.
Yep.
Pitched for the Boston Red Sox.
Well,
$429,000.
At the end of the day, though, we're gonna be super thankful for this dude because he was a massive part of that 2018 run.
Oh yes, that's why
100%.
That's why people need to know it's not like a distaste with the player. Like we love the
player.
It
just sucks that he couldn't stay healthy post 2018. Well, more like 2019.
Yeah. Anyways, big picture on the other side of the return though. Grissom, he came in. The dude can hit. He hit pretty well I think he's been like 300-ish at bats over the last 2 years in the majors. He batted .330 in AAA last year, which is it's an absurd average.
Power hitter too.
Even in AAA. He's got decent pop. Like a decent pop. He can maybe be a 15 home run a year guy, which at second base, if you can bat .280 and hit 15 home runs,
take it all day.
At second base, that's very good. The big picture is his defense. He's not going to be a shortstop. He's been playing some left field. Craig Breslow made it seem like he will be their second baseman. I haven't dived deep into exactly where and how his errors are happening, but I did hear a lot of it's with his arm. So hopefully second base can help fix that. In the minors last year, his fielding percentage or error percentage at second was like 990, and at shortstop it was like 965 or something like that.
It's a big difference.
So yeah, it's something. Don't quote me the exact numbers, but something like that. So it's a big difference in terms of error percentage. If he can be serviceable defensively, do the job, don't make a ton of errors, make the plays that need to be done, and hit 280, 15 home runs, 30 doubles, 35 doubles, we're gonna be very happy with that. Very happy with that for 24. And then, if he comes up and can be decent defensively and good and pretty good offensively in 24, well, now his trade value next off season is doubled, tripled what it was right now, and he's still got 5 years of control left.
And he's only 22.
Yeah. Well, exactly. Yeah, he's only 22, so and he's got 6 years of control. So if he has a good 24, and let's say that Mayer's ready, they'll be able to ship him off, and his value could double or triple.
Yeah, and he's a bigger guy too. So hopefully you could get power with him. He doesn't project like that, but he's 6'3", 210. That's a big guy to play second base.
Oh yeah, I mean he's not a small guy. And that's why he's built for a shortstop. He's a big dude, or he's built for the outfield too, and that's why they've been playing him in left field. Right. And I think that maybe there's a chance that beyond 24 he does end up being in left field at Fenway, because obviously left field at Fenway is not the most difficult position to play as long as you get to learn the monster.
Yeah, that's the big thing. You got to learn how to play the monster.
Yeah, and once you learn that, it's not like this rocket science thing. It's just understanding when the bat off the ball, which ones are hitting the monster. It's not that difficult to figure out. But big picture, I mean, I like the trade. We'll never trades can completely change from one year to the next in terms of how they pan out. But at this, judging at the time of the deal, I love it. To unload the unreliable Sale, and just swapping out Sale for Giolito, durability wise is you go into the season 10 times, I would say 100 times more comfortable that Giolito is going to give you 30 starts versus Sale giving you 30 starts.
Yeah,
Giolito's giving you he's been durable across the last handful of years. So I think it's just they filled a hole and saved money basically, and swapped out Sale for Giolito. Second base is filled, we would say. They still need pitching, though. And that's obviously the big picture here. They need a right-handed bat as well. What do you buy into, and JR, I'll give you this one more before you head out. What do you buy into this whole report that Breslow is supposedly telling players, free agents, that they need to just wait a little bit because they're trying to free up money? Now, I heard through, I guess you could say, the grapevine that the person that leaked that to, I think it was Chris Cotillo, was Teoscar Hernandez's agent specifically. Take it as you want. I don't know if you want to believe me or not from the person, from the source that I heard it, but whatever. What are your whole thoughts on, do you buy into that? Do you think they're going to trade off Kenley and use the money?
I think personally they're going to probably have to, and I think it's probably true because, I mean, with everything that has been reported, they're trying to be aggressive with Teoscar Hernandez, and they're also trying to be aggressive with a certain Boris client. They haven't named a name yet for what Boris client it is, but I think they're probably going to end up moving off Kenley Jansen. That's going to free up some money, and they're going to be an extra $30 million under the tax threshold, the first threshold. So they could use that $60 million or $50 million to go and get a pitcher in Teoscar Hernandez. If whether it's Blake Snell, Jordan Montgomery, or if they did Teoscar Hernandez, Shota Imanaga, and then a trade. You know what I mean? They could do that.
I don't particularly love Imanaga based off where his price range is going. I don't really want to give him 5-100.
He's got 8 days. He has 8 days to decide.
Oh yeah, I heard he was visiting teams this week. He was visiting teams basically had to make their offer to him, and then he was going to visit maybe the 2 or 3 teams that he was most interested in, and he's going to make a decision. I like him. I don't love him. If the price is actually $460, $465, even maybe $470, I would deal with it.
It won't be Yamamoto. Fuck the market.
But I don't really love the idea of giving him 5-100. It's a big commitment for a guy that I think is going to be maybe a number 3 here, maybe. But the fact is do you want to commit $20 million a year to a potential number 3 that you also know has never pitched in this league before? He kind of gives up. He's a little bit more of a contact guy. I don't love it. I don't love him. Basically, I would rather just go ahead.
What I was gonna say is if you don't want Imanaga, they might as well just go after Blake Snell or Jordan Montgomery, and then just get ready and just full push for Roki Sasaki next year, because he's gonna get posted next year.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, financially, they don't have to prep for him. No team has to prep for him next year, because he'll still be under 25, so we can only sign what Ohtani's deal was, which is not a lot of money. So any team will be in on him, and it's you just got to assume at this moment he might just go to fucking LA with them.
Well, I know, but you should get ready to have your ducks in a row to make a nice pitch to him.
Oh yeah, well, you know how you make a nice pitch to him? Have a good fucking season. Show him that you're going to spend some money and have a successful 2024. That's how you tell him and say, if the Boston Red Sox come out and win 90 games this year, they make the playoffs. So even if they don't make the World Series, let's say they lose in the playoffs, and they have Kyle Teal about to enter the picture, Roman Anthony about to enter the picture, Mayer, these guys that are emerging, that tells them, okay, this team's on the fucking rise, and I can jump on it now and be part of what could be a long-term sustainable team, because you have a core of young players on the cheap. If those three guys pan out, they're going to have Casas, Bello, and those three, never mind maybe Duran, Rafael, or Abreu, all in very cheap money for 4 to 5 years. Like that's going to be a wild window if they pan out, the chance to succeed.
Yeah, but I think that's the prep work. I would say that's the prep work is you need to, if you really want to lure a guy like Sasaki for next year, you have to put the pieces in place this year to be competitive and show him. But like, I just don't buy it, unfortunately. You know, I mean, hopefully I'm proven wrong. I'm just not feeling it.
Yeah, I'm not betting on him being here. I'm not even really thinking about it at this point that much. I'm not putting much into consideration of him. That's a next offseason thing. Hopefully it's not like September of this year where like all of September everyone just like turned their minds to Yamamoto in the future because that's all we could think about because the team was falling off a hill.
Yeah.
Hopefully next September we're a little bit different. Jerry, you hopping off?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to. I gotta be up incredibly early for work now. Thought I had to close, but manager changed my schedule. So.
All right, brother.
Have a good night, and yeah, just let me know when this goes up so I can post it.
Yeah, I'll probably post it tonight so you can do it in the morning.
Sounds good.
All right,
peace out, guys. Have a good night.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, I mean, just to wrap up the whole Red Sox as a whole tonight, we'll do 10-15 minutes of the Patriots and then move on. They just need to spend money, and I think it's going to be via trade of how they acquire this guy, but I don't want them to go balls to the wall for an value for a pitcher unless it's like a true ace, a true guy that is going to give you mid to low threes every year. And there's not that many options, so it's like I'd rather you find, like I said, a Tristan McKenzie is a guy that really the upside is very good. They'll want a big return, but I think that big return can be around like Duran. Like if you went and offered Duran and Rafaela to them, I mean, do you take that? Like, would you do Duran and Rafaela? McKenzie, he had a 2.90 ERA 2 years ago. This past year he was banged up. They need outfielders desperately. That's their biggest weakness going into the season is they need outfielders. I know you're gonna have a head coach, a manager there that's new. Tito's retiring, one of the best ever.
Yeah, I'm just trying to look at. I'm looking at McKenzie's numbers. I mean, obviously he didn't throw a ton last year. Only 16 innings. Yeah, I mean, he had a good 2022, made 30 starts, 191 innings. Got a little bit lucky. He had a 2.96 ERA, 3.59 FIP. So obviously last year, kind of an anomaly. Certainly kind of a high upside target. But yeah, like I don't want to go, crazy for somebody with a 1 year window. Like I said earlier, if you're gonna go get a guy like Corbin Burns, I'm not giving up a premium name without the assurance that he's signing a long-term extension. So I think
yes,
that's kind of where we seem to be on the same page with that.
So speaking of Cleveland, Shane Bieber is a decent option because I don't think he'll cost a lot, and he supposedly is open to talking extension now. I think if you could get him, you absolutely wouldn't have to give up one of the top three. You could get him for a reasonable deal and bring him in. It would all depend on the contract. I'm not giving him 5 or 6 years. If he'll sign 3 or 4 years, all right, maybe that's a ballpark I'm in. But like I said, I think like a McKenzie, Luzardo is on the higher end of that tier, that like second tier, not the ace tier, where I rather just give up a package around Duran or around Rafaela and York, and maybe even like a Houck or I guess a Cutter Crawford in the right deal. I just don't want to be giving out Kyle Teal for, I don't know, like Luzardo, and Luzardo is a high 3 ERA guy for his career, and Kyle Teal ends up being a superstar, top 5 catcher in the league, which I think that's very possible. I'm just not about that type of swap. But let's move on. We'll finish this up with, I don't know, we're at an hour and 10 minutes, so about 10, 15 minutes of the Patriots. They are the number 3 pick. They were walking through, I saw this guy, the reporter Dakota something, I forget his last name, going through the scenarios. They're at the number 3 pick. If they lose, they're guaranteed at least the 3rd pick. I think a big variable is the Saints-Falcons game. We need, I think, the Saints to beat the Falcons.
Okay.
I believe that is correct. If they do that, that opens up a big window, like a very, like, I would say like a 50-50 window after that of the other like 4 or 5 games to get the number 2 pick and leapfrog Washington based off strength of schedule. If the Saints lose, and again, I think it might be the other way around off the top of my head, but if they lose, it becomes like a very fine line. You need like 5 other matchups to go the other way for them to leapfrog. So odds are, let's assume they have a number 3 pick. Does Chicago go? At this moment, Chicago go Caleb Williams? Do you think they're more likely to trade back?
So they're the wild card to me. It really depends if they're invested in Fields. I know we were talking to one of our fantasy leagues what we think the Bears are going to do at number 1. I made the point based on the preface that Eberflus and the GM were going to be gone, although I guess there's no, like, the thought process is they might stick around now. Because usually new GM, new head coach, they want their own quarterback. So I would say if the current GM and Eberflus stay put, I don't know who the GM in Chicago is.
Right, Pace.
If Pace and Eberflus stay put, I would say that it decreases the odds of a trade. It really depends on are they committed to Justin Fields? If they're committed to Justin Fields, then there's no excuse for them to not trade the number 1 pick, in my opinion, unless they're wildly enamored with Marvin Harrison Jr. as a legitimate stud number 1 guy, where they could stay pat and go and get him. Do I think that, are they better off doing something like, trade back, with somebody like the Raiders, for example? Although I don't think they would trade that far back, because I think the Raiders are now outside the top 10. They had the number 5 pick not that long ago.
Quick note, there was a report today that they could theoretically, rumored to believe that they could get a bigger package than what the what they got last year from the Panthers. They're like, if they moved, let's just say the Patriots were interested and the Patriots offered a big haul. Like, you move back from 1 to 3, they're moving up for Caleb. Washington then likely goes Drake May, you would say?
I think at this point I would be very surprised if Washington takes a quarterback.
You'd be surprised.
Yes. I mean, I don't think that Sam Howell is that bad that they need to start over at quarterback.
No, but if you have the number 2 pick and you feel like this guy is the franchise guy,
well, then yeah, you take him. I just don't.
If they love Drake May and they feel like he's a franchise guy, you take him. You don't play around games and, like, maybe Howell figures it out and he's like a top 15 quarterback when you pass him Drake May and then he ends up being a top 5 quarterback type of thing.
I mean,
so I would guess that they would go May, and then that opens it up the door for Marvin Harrison Jr. Just go right to him at 3.
Right. So if they're dead set on Fields, I think that, and this is more of an old school thinking for me, that you trade out a number 1 to somebody who wants Caleb Williams, and you bolster your offensive line, and then you go take Roma Dunze at the number 10 pick. Unless you think that you can get a top offensive lineman at 10, in which case you take Harrison at 3 and the lineman at 10.
So I would probably think if they move back to 3, they jump at Harrison, because this is a kind of very strong tackle draft. So maybe they could take like Joe Alt or the guy from
Fashanu
from
Penn
Notre
State.
Dame.
And Fashanu is from Penn State.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. Yes, they'll probably both go in the top 7 to 8. So that you wouldn't get either of them probably, but I would probably go Marvin Harrison and move back. But anyway, so if you're the Patriots, at number 3, let's just say you're sitting at 3 and Caleb and Drake may go.
Jaden Daniels.
What are you jumping at Daniels at 3? Are you?
Yes.
So you'd what would be, you would take Daniels at 3?
Yes. Because I think if you trade back, then the only reason you're trading back is because somebody's trading up for Jaden Daniels. So if you're trading back, it means that you're punting on a first round quarterback. Because I think the drop off to the next guy, which take your spinning wheel and figure out who it lands on, because there's a smattering of guys after those top 3, and any one of those
is going to be Penix at this point.
Well, you have Michael Penix, you have Bo Nix,
JJ McCarthy,
maybe Quinn Ewers. I'm kind of iffy on JJ as a first round quarterback.
Me too.
So, but you have you have Penix, Nix, Ewers to a degree. I'm sure there's somebody else in there that I'm forgetting about.
There is another guy off the top of my head. I can't think what his name is. I want to say no.
So
I'll pull it up. Give me a mind blank.
If you're the Pats, you need a quarterback. I think, in an ideal scenario, they end up with the number 2 pick and they take Drake May. Like, that's my ideal scenario. But if they're still sitting at number 3, then I think you have to go with Jaden Daniels. It's tough because we're kind of going into a weird situation here where I think we're expecting that, a week from yesterday, we're going to hear that we're expecting maybe not Monday the 8th, but we're expecting sometime next week for there to be an announcement that Bill Belichick and the Patriots are parting ways, and that the Patriots need a new head coach and a GM. So if that in fact happens, I think all bets are off. If Bill's still here, then I would bet, solidly that the Patriots do not stay at number 3, that he will trade back, because that's what Bill does. That's what he's always done, is he trades back to add assets and still get the guy he wants, or still get a guy.
Speaking of that, there was a report today. I want to say it might have been Greg Bedard that posted it. No, I forget who posted it. But anyways, that said that if Belichick returns, people close to him have been told that he is, quote, going to be on the offensive and have a game plan for it. I kind of joking about it is, does he not have game plans in previous off seasons? So I didn't really like the second part. But what do you think? And I know I've asked you this before, not so much what would you say if you're Kraft and Belichick walks in and says, I understand we've failed like the last year. I'm going to be aggressive offensively. We're going to get a new QB. We're going to address the offensive, left tackle primarily, and bring back Onwenu, and we're going to add receiving weapons. Like, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to be very, very aggressive in the approach. Do you think Kraft, what would you put the percent chance that Belichick's back at this moment?
5%.
Oh wow! So you're that convinced that he's gone?
Well, because Bill's not going to walk into Kraft's office and say, and just completely change what he's done for 25 years. Bill's not going to do that. Because if Bill was going to do that now, he would have done it 4 years ago when Brady walked out the door. Bill still believes
not if he thought he didn't need to, and now he does. One of the greatest things Belichick has his career now, his arrogance has overshadowed some of that at times. But I don't know how we can go into the off season after this year and say, even if he was back, let's just assume he's back for this scenario. How he says, okay, I still don't need to address the offense. The offense is the entire reason they're at 4 wins. If they had a serviceable offense, they would probably be at 8 or 9 wins.
Yeah, I think that Bill looks at it and says that he can still build on defense with a serviceable offense. I to my core believe that that's how he thinks he can win in the NFL. And the problem is that
yes, but he hasn't had a serviceable offense.
Right, I understand that, but I think that he looks at the roster and says this roster is a serviceable offense with better coaching.
So what? Fire Belichick, O'Brien?
No, I think it would just be, they have to maybe change the offensive scheme. I
don't buy into that. I don't think it would be that.
But at that point you're kind of grasping at straws. You're assuming a lot. Yes, if Bill thinks his job is in jeopardy, then yes, he should be willing to go all in. But Bill's going to go all in with how Bill builds a team. Bill doesn't know how to build a team around an offense because he's never done it. Because he didn't need to. He had Tom Brady. He could go to Tom and say, hey, here's our offensive system. Let's go find guys that we can plug and play in this system because Brady was here. He didn't have to redesign an offensive scheme because he didn't have the quarterback. So now, granted, to answer your original question of if Bill comes in and says here's my plan, I think he'd have to be incredibly specific for Kraft to consider holding on to him for another year. If he just comes in and says, we're going to go get the quarterback, we're addressing the offensive line, and we're going to upgrade at wide receiver. I don't think that because that's vague. Bill saying I'm going to upgrade at wide receiver is, well, what does that mean? If Bill says, hey, if the plan is, if Bill says, hey, look, we got the number 2 pick, we're going quarterback here. The scouts are going to be all over it. If we assume that Caleb Williams goes number 1, our 2 top targets are Drake May and Jaden Daniels, or Drake May and whoever else, and we're going to come up with a plan to identify who we believe that guy to be. And then these guys are T. Higgins is a free agent. We're going to go pay him because we believe he's a legitimate number 1. We believe, we like this guy at offensive, these guys at offensive. If he went that specific, then I could see Kraft being okay, because then he can hold Bill accountable and say, well, you said that, Drake May was your number 1 target. You didn't draft him at number 2. You didn't pay you didn't do all the things you said you were going to do. Then Bill can be more held accountable in that case.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I would think that Kraft would want obviously a little bit more than just, hey, we're going to be aggressive, obviously. And I think that the decision from Kraft could result in multiple meetings with Belichick over a week before making a final decision. I would say 2 weeks ago, I would have put it at 10-15% chance that he's back. Now I'm probably closer to about 20-25% chance. I think there's a scenario in which I think is a very realistic, and by realistic, I still wouldn't bet on it, like I said, but very real chance that he either acknowledges and changes his approach, or he stays with less control in the front office. And we've gone deep in, and we won't dive deep in because I want to finish up here, but like, unless another team's going to give him full control, which could happen. LA is supposedly have some interest in him, and maybe Washington or whatever. But unless another team's going to give him full control, and he wants to uproot his life, uproot where he's lived for the last 25 years, and move across to LA, or Washington's not that far away, but down to Washington or across the country, like, he may just say, all right, like, I'll take the less control and stay here. Because then you also have to think about his sons. Like, his sons are rooted here. Are they going to follow him across the country? There's a lot more to it than, I guess, what I'm saying.
Yeah, but like Bill, but like aside from his adult kids, nothing's tying him here. He's not married. He's not seeing anybody that we know of, and so, and he's an old, he's going to be 72 if he isn't already. So yeah. He's older, right? One thing to factor in too is no coach in NFL history at his age has ever been hired for a job.
Yeah, granted, that's what I'm saying.
Granted, we're talking. Bill's an unprecedented name that would be available on the market, right? It's not like Marv Levy, out there at 80 years old still wants to coach. Bill Belichick's, in my opinion, the greatest of all time. So it's different, right? But I don't. If you're in Bill's position, and the Chargers call and say, hey, here's $25 million a year to be our head coach and our GM. I don't know how he would say no to that.
If he's still getting paid $25 million to stay in New England and just be the head coach.
That's not going to happen. That's not.
It could. No, I wouldn't bet on it. I'm just basically what I'm just saying.
There is a 0% chance that Bill stays on with the New England Patriots as just the head coach with a $25 million salary. That's not happening.
Maybe. We don't know what his exact salary is, but
anyway, he makes $18.5 million a year as head coach.
Do we know what he makes as GM? Like, are those separated?
Well, what's the math on that? $6.5 million as the GM. If he makes $25 million and $18.5 of it is his coaching salary, that's
that's the thing. Do we know that he makes? We don't know how much he exactly makes.
Yeah, I saw an article. I think it was either CBS or USA Today that said that Bill's coaching salary, his salary breakdown is 18.5 as head coach, 6.5 as GM.
Yeah, I guess. Anyways, big picture. I just think there's more of a chance that he's back under different guidelines, even whether it's not as GM or that he just acknowledges the mistakes and has a concrete game plan to craft that he's going to change his ways. Do I want that? I don't know, man. I think it might just be time to move on, but I do think that there's a very real, and by real I mean maybe 25% chance that he's still here. Well, we're coming up pretty fast. I would say still here in about 2 or 3 weeks, which is kind of scary.
Yeah, I think we'll have a resolution next week. Obviously, week 18 is all the games are on Sunday, so Monday is, what do they call it? Black Monday, when all the coaches get fired.
We won't know then.
We're not going to know Monday.
Not know until
I would assume the give it 10 to 14. Give it 10 to 14 days from now.
Yeah, I was gonna say at least. I would say at least 7, like at least a week. Probably longer, maybe like 10 to 14. Yeah, 10 to 14 days is a good point.
Yeah, because he'll meet with Kraft either Monday or Tuesday. They'll have a discussion, and then maybe we'll hear back at the end of the week or over the weekend.
Yeah, because even if they want to move on, I think they'll try to do it amicably, and then there's obviously a discussion, and we'll finish it up there. Just one last thing is, there's a lot of talk of him being traded, and it definitely could happen. But
yeah, I don't think Kraft wants to fire him or let Bill walk out the door. I don't think he wants to do that to Bill. I think in an ideal scenario, I think Kraft is like, hey, if we're gonna part ways, he's like, pick a team where you want to go to, and we'll make it work for you.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Is I don't like could he be traded? Absolutely. But I still think that the most likely path is they just walk away from each other. It's like an amicable breakup, and Belichick becomes a free agent to sign wherever he wants.
That's the most likely scenario. Like, I don't think it's going to be a case where it's like, Robert Kraft calls Bill into the office and says, "Hey, Bill, like, you're fired. Go pack your stuff." That's like I can't wrap my brain around that actually.
Or it's going to be, we're not coaching with you. If you want to coach somewhere else, we're going to trade you and hold you hostage and all that. I don't see that happening either.
No, I don't either. I think this will be amicable where, they have a legitimate, heart-to-heart sit down, talk about where things are at, what's happened over the last 25 years, and probably what their visions are for the future. Like, I think that's a legit, they'll have that conversation. Kraft obviously wants to get back to the playoffs. They put a priority, he said that, put a premium on that, that they wanted to be a playoff team. And, I know we talked in the preseason about what we thought the Pats could be, and this was, I think, worse than any of us thought it would be. This was like truly rock bottom for what this season could.
Yeah, I was at like 9 or 10 wins. You were at like 8 or 9 wins. Most people were at like 8 or 9 for the most part.
But, yeah, like, I don't, if you had said 4 and 12, 4 and 13 or 5 and 12, I'd have been like, no way. I would have been like that would have been, multiple injuries and just complete, like, the offense completely falls apart. But they'll have a solid chat next week and, talk about a lot of different things. What's the plan for the future, where things are at now, and, I like Bill a lot. I still think he's a really, really good coach. And I just don't think he would stay here under that circumstance where he loses his GM job but keeps the head. I just don't think he would want to do that, unless he knew that he didn't have the GM head coach offer somewhere else. If nobody wants him as the GM and everybody only wants him to be the head coach, then yeah, I think there's a real shot he stays, because he's not going to go to another team and take both jobs.
Well, that's the thing. I think his agent, and that's why it could take a little bit longer, but his agent probably has been getting feelers around the league about that too. So, he should have a decent idea of pretty quickly of if that's on the table. But anyways, we'll leave it at there. Hopefully by this time next week, as usual, there's maybe a Red Sox have an ace or a top 2 pitcher on the team. But nice. Yeah, for now, we'll see you next week. Any final quick statement?
No, Happy New Year. Hopefully, good things lie ahead for, Boston sports, and, we'll be here to cover it if it does.
Sounds good. All right. See you next week. Thank you for listening, and we'll be back in, 7 days or so. Peace.
Have a good night.